Hello everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the first Zoom event hosted by Don't Leave Organise. We're rather overwhelmed because we've had over 800 registrations, but delighted that so many people are interested. We've currently got 340 participants, 4 with raised hands. So I just wanted to explain that we've got 2 people that we're describing as spotters. When we get to the Q&A session, they will be looking for raised hands. So unless you've got some urgent need for instructions, you can put that in the chat. So if you could lower hands now, and we've got a Q&A session after our speakers. So we're going to have a technical intro, first of all, from Pete Firmin to explain how the session will run from a technical perspective, and then we'll get the meeting started. We've gone up to, wow, I can't count, 353 participants and rising. So we will start as it is 7 o'clock. I'll hand over to Pete now for the technical intro.
Thanks, Kathy. Just a couple of things. Firstly, can everybody please stop unmuting themselves? I'm muting you all, and then some of you are unmuting yourselves.
Sorry.
So, with 300 odd participants, the background noise can get quite incredible if you've got somebody else in your house or your washing machine running or whatever. So please stay muted until you're called to speak. The first thing, otherwise it's impossible. If you don't know how the system works in terms of raising your hand, for most people, if you look at manage participants at the bottom of your screen, the participants will come up, and there's a row of buttons at the bottom of that, one of which says raise hand. And if you press that, little hand, blue hand comes up that I can see and Kathy as chair can see. The other thing is that, you know, for conversation, whatever, please use the chat as well. If you're not able to find the raise hand button, then put in the chat that you want to speak, but it's much preferable if you use the raised hand button. It's easier for us to see, because the chat moves as people contribute, so we can't always keep on top of that. And please don't abuse the chat in any way. If we feel that somebody is abusing the chat, they'll be warned once. If they continue, then they'll just be thrown out of the meeting, so be warned. But happy for it to be used to, you know, talk to each other and everything else. Okay, and Kathy will run through all that again once we move to the Q&A anyway.
Great, thank you, Pete. We're up to 390 participants. So, as I said earlier, this is our inaugural Zoom event hosted by Don't Leave Organise. We launched exactly 2 weeks ago today, seeing a need to give people hope to stay in the Labour Party and work together through the Labour Party, to have a voice regarding internal democracy, regarding policy making, as well as our fundamental grassroots campaigning. So a two-pronged aim, really. Since then, people who have signed up to support our network include Matt Rack, one of our speakers this evening, Ian Hodson, John McDonnell, the Fire Brigades Union as a whole, likewise the Bakers Union, a number of our 2019 parliamentary candidates, including Pamela Fitzpatrick, another of our speakers, plus almost 2,000 individual signatories. And we're absolutely delighted to have all of your support. The real strength of this network comes from grassroots campaigners in our communities and in our workplaces. Tonight, we're looking at the topic of the leaked report. And as Kevin Courtney said at a recent event, we must all stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity in all our struggles. And of course, a number of struggles are highlighted through the allegations that have arisen from this report. We are obviously going to talk about allegations, and in our debate, it is probably better not to name any names. You can refer to structures, but we all know that what the issues are. So really, I think we can go ahead and start with our speakers. If Pamela Fitzpatrick is here, I'd like to introduce Pam as the parliamentary candidate for Harrow East, who has spoken about the allegations very robustly from a personal perspective. Of course, we know that the report suggests that people who were standing in particular areas or of a particular political persuasion were not given the support they might have expected. So it's great that Pam is here tonight to speak to us from that perspective, and also, of course, as a member of the Labour Party on a personal level.
Thank you, Kathy. Thanks, Kathy. It's great to see so many people here tonight, lots of familiar faces, so hello everybody. Yes, I've said this before, you've probably heard me say it before, but I'll say it again, that when I saw the leaked report, I was shocked at the language, at the viciousness there, but I wasn't surprised, because I, like many of you, have experienced much of this, particularly during 2016 with the coup, where lots of people were suspended. So I was really quite shocked at the content, but not surprised. And I felt strangely vindicated, like many people have said to me, because we knew this was going on. But whenever we tried to raise concerns or complaints, they were trivialised. And it makes me really angry. So I'm a councillor in Harrow. I'm a proud socialist councillor in Harrow. I supported Jeremy Corbyn, of course, because I'm a socialist. So when he came along as the leader, I thought it was fantastic. I stood as a candidate in 2019, but not 2017. But I supported the candidate in 2017. But what I found on the doorstep, like many people, is that in 2019, so many people were telling me, and in Harrow, there's a large Jewish community. And quite often on the doorstep, we would be told that they couldn't possibly vote for Labour because of Jeremy, because of anti-Semitism, and because of his failure to deal with the issue. And of course, I tried to defend that and was so often met with the response, but your own MPs say this, your own MPs, your own councillors, your own assembly members. And it's really hard to counter that when people on our own side are saying that. And now I realise that many of these characters who were involved in reinforcing that false message about Jeremy must have known the truth, must have known what was going on internally. So, a strange mix of emotions for me, anger, feeling kind of vindicated, etc. But what I feel now is such anger at the way the party has dealt with this issue. So I'm a manager, I run a charity, and if somebody had brought a report to me with this content, I would have been horrified and I would have taken action immediately. I was a shop steward for Unite for many, many years, over a decade. And again, I would have expected due process to take place, that those people would be suspended, of course not found to be guilty until some due process had gone through, and a proper investigation. And none of that has happened. And instead, we find now that there is a separate investigation going on into the investigation. And I want to know why. Why are we having an investigation into the investigation? We have a report that was commissioned, it seems to me, entirely appropriately, when there was already an investigation into the Labour Party by the Equalities and Human Rights Commission. It seems to have been conducted by staff under the authority of the General Secretary. So unless we're saying that we don't believe the accuracy of the report, why is there a need for further investigation? It seems to me this is just a way of kicking things into the long grass. There can be no other explanation for this, and I'm really concerned. So still today, 17 days I think it is since the report was leaked, and nobody's been suspended. So what rules are we relying on? Is there a separate Labour Party rule book for some people? You know, the people who were suspended, there were 9 people suspended in Harrow in 2016 as part of, now we know, the trot hunt, for trivial things, for saying that there was nothing as low as a Blairite, for example, or being a Marxist. And we now know that, you know, this was a deliberate attempt to suspend people, to stop them voting in the 2016 leadership election. But more than that, it seems to have been a sport, doesn't it? It seems to have been, this was a game for people. It was all great fun. You know, people seem to think that they were part of the thick of it or something, rather than employees of a socialist party. And we are a socialist party, no matter what people try to portray us as. So I feel that I did get support actually from staff during the 2019 election. I absolutely did. But I did have elected people who were certainly working against me. And at the count, it's been said before, I wrote for Labour Briefing, we had some people at the count, Labour elected people, who were happy that we had lost and were hanging out with the Tory rather than commiserating all the volunteers who'd worked so hard in 2019. I think now something has to be done, but I feel like nobody is listening. Like, where is the justice? What is going to happen? When are these people going to be suspended, if ever? Every day I hear something new, which is kind of worse than the day before. And I'm starting to despair. You can't despair. We've got to organise. We can't give up. So it's great that you've organised this. I suppose that's all I'll say for now. And come back to the question time. But thanks for keeping this on the agenda, because there's huge moves, it seems, to sweep it under the carpet. And I do want to say just that all the kind of issues, I've had lots of dealings with some of the staff that were mentioned in the report, personal kind of, dealings. But the current staff are different, I believe, many of the current staff, and we can't tar all staff with the same brush, really. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you so much, Pamela, and thank you for being so succinct and clear in those points that you've made. We absolutely must keep this on the agenda, as Pam has said, but we should also keep revisiting it as there are developments. So this was brought up in the NEC meeting last week, and I'm sure some of our speakers will refer to that as well. I'm going to introduce now, it's my real pleasure to introduce Belle Ribeiro Addy, previously Chief of Staff for Diane Abbott, and a new MP, relatively new, for Streatham, where she's lived all her life since the 2019 general election. So Belle's election to that constituency was one of the few highlights for us on the left in the 2019 general election. She is also, of course, a member of the campaign group of Socialist MPs, and here she is, Belle. Thank you. Are you with us, Belle? Can we find Belle, Pete?
She appears to have gone.
Okay. Well, we can come back to Belle, because I know I can.
She might be having connection problems.
Okay. Well, I know I've seen Matt Rack. So Matt, can I call you to speak? Matt is the General Secretary of the Fire Brigades Union, and also as myself being co-vice chair of the Labour Representation Committee, we're delighted that Matt is the chair of the LRC. The Fire Brigades Union is a socialist campaigning trades union that raises so many topical issues, raising voices in demands for everybody in struggle, and very successfully as well. Matt in the past has talked about some very complicated issues, but said very clearly there are enormous complications around some of these issues, but that should not prevent anyone from speaking up against oppression and for justice. So you can see why we are very keen to hear him speak on this issue now, and hopefully he will also talk about some of the developments that arose in last week's NEC meeting. Thank you, Matt. 7 minutes. Thank you.
Hi everyone. It's great to see so many people attending meetings like this, and I think the case for that we need to organise more than ever before. I mean, I wanted to put the report in a political context, but first of all, on the report itself, I suppose for me, it's people are saying whether these allegations are alleged reports, alleged comments on what's happened. So it seems to me that it's pretty, as I said in another meeting, if these are fabrications, someone's gone to a great deal of length to produce 800 pages of fabricated evidence. It seems to me that there clearly are things that have been said that are completely unacceptable. And I suppose the question for anyone in a normal world would be, if this happened in a workplace, what would have happened to those people? Action would have already been taken against those people. I have to say also, if these had been people on the left, in our party, what would have happened to them? They would have been marched out the door as quickly as anything, as we've seen, unfortunately, over recent years. And we are therefore going to have to campaign on trying to demand that things are done. I have to say, I don't hold out huge optimism that the report is going to be dealt with in the way that I think many of us would want to see it dealt with. And we have to prepare for that as well. And many people have said this is, you know, the issue of the culture in the Labour Party headquarters has to be addressed, and there are clearly cultural issues. I have to say, I think this is above all political. This is about politics, and it's about the political battle for the soul of the Labour Party, and a determination on the part of very powerful and entrenched forces to ensure that actually the voices of socialists are silenced and as much as possible pushed out of the Labour Party. I think that's the scale of the battle that we are facing. And for me, it goes back to the whole agenda of Corbyn, of the whole debate that was prompted by the election of Jeremy Corbyn. And I look back over the past 5 years have been a remarkable whirlwind for those of us involved in politics. Absolutely staggering how quickly things have happened. I remember reading a New Statesman article in 2015 after the general election about how Labour needed to be a sensible opposition. It's worrying to see some of those phrases creeping back in, actually. And this was on the back of the endless drive for austerity. The idea that Labour shouldn't be opposed to austerity. And then Corbyn came along and shook that all upside down, shook things around, mobilised hundreds of thousands, infused people, drew in tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people into the Labour Party, turning it into a mass party. And as Kathy's mentioned the Labour Representation Committee, I wrote in an article for Labour Briefing that this was the opportunity of a lifetime. And for me, it remains that, because that happened at a time when most of my adult life, the left has been in retreat, trade unions have been in retreat. We have what people call neoliberalism or rampant capitalism seeming to be triumphant, even when it was exposed by the financial crash of 2007 and 2008. And we're discussing this, and we're discussing the Labour report in the context of a number of setbacks, and we have to bear those in mind as well. The defeat in the general election, a very significant defeat for Labour and for the left. The Labour leadership election, where clearly the left candidate was not successful, and of course now the leaked document on the back of the NEC elections, where it seemed clear that actually the right have got quite a grip. currently on the National Executive, and that will colour how this report is now handled. So I think one of the things, a few points I wanted to just try to suggest as ways to work in the current climate on all of those issues. And that is, what does the left need to do? And I welcome various initiatives that are taking off currently. Don't leave Organise. I think there are discussions going on in Momentum, and some of our officials, activists, FBU activists are involved there as well. I think the report highlights how significant a threat Corbyn was seen as. The degree, the fact that Labour Party members, and I know lots of us knew this, but to see it in writing confirmed is still a bit shocking. Well, not particularly shocked by the content of the report, but the fact that Labour Party members would rather see a Tory government than a Corbyn government, I think should be a wake-up call to lots of us. But the truth is this: the left is fragmented. We haven't managed to overcome that during the period of the Corbyn leadership. And I think one of the things we need to do is actually reflect on our own weaknesses and failures and try and, frankly, wake up to them, because otherwise we will carry on repeating those mistakes. So for me, the message is don't leave Organise, as the campaign is titled. I think most obviously on the case of the National Executive elections, the left should be able to win the constituency seats on the National Executive, but not if we are disunited. And that means not allowing anyone to dictate left slate. It means collaborating together genuinely. But it does mean working together to build a united left slate and then campaigning to ensure that we win that. I think the left needs to be more open and democratic. I think we need to not waste opportunities, and the truth is I think we wasted some opportunities over the past 5 years. And I have to say, I think there are questions, there's not about being uncomrade, there are criticisms to be made of the leadership when we had that. You know, for me, most notably, the 2018 conference, we should have won open selection at that conference, and we had every opportunity to do so. It's the policy of many of the unions. It's the long-standing position of Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, and we had the overwhelming support of constituency delegates, and we should have taken that opportunity. We didn't take it, and we're paying the price for it, frankly. We need to discuss politics and policies. We need to demand no retreat on policies. Interestingly, the Keir Starmer's campaign had to tack to the left in the leadership election. We need to say no retreat. We need to go further. And I think just to finish off on this, the COVID-19 crisis, and I know I haven't spent a lot of time on the Labour report, because to me it does fit into a wider political debate. COVID-19 highlights absolutely a failure, a governmental failure on a momentous scale. And I think, unfortunately, there's people in the Labour Party who are too scared or wary of saying that at this stage. It is a complete and utter failure of emergency planning. It highlights the fact that when they talk about resilience, i.e. the ability to deal with a national crisis, the cuts on an unprecedented scale that they've imposed on public services have completely devastated resilience in the National Health Service, in local government, in the Fire and Rescue Service, and elsewhere in public services. And we need to, highlighted most obviously by the obvious failures of PPE and the failure to develop an understandable and rapid testing regime. So for us, I think the case remains absolutely overwhelming. The case for change, the case for radical policies, the case for socialist policies. We shouldn't apologise about that at all. I think the current crisis demonstrates that we're absolutely 100% right. And therefore the challenge to us is, can we overcome some of the historical divisions that we've had within our left organisations and left networks? That's the real challenge, because only by doing that will we have any chance of making progress in terms of the leaked report, and only by doing that will we have any chance of defending the left policies we've won over the past 5 years, and only by doing that will we have the possibility of reclaiming a left majority on the National Executive and building the Labour Party as a socialist party. And I think that's the challenge that's in front of all of us. Thanks very much.
That's great, Matt. Thank you very much. Thank you. Those are messages that we'll probably come back to in the Q&A and take some more comments on that, because those are issues that we can go into in much more detail. I'm really pleased that I think we've got Belle back now. So again, introducing Belle Ribeiro Addy, previously Chief of Staff for Diane Abbott, now MP for Streatham, and a member of the campaign group of Socialist MPs. Welcome, Belle.
Thank you. Thank you. As I say, this call couldn't come at a more important time. Touching on the COVID-19 crisis, we are now looking at how the Tories are trying to very poorly imitate what would have been Labour's policy on things such as spending, and that would have made such a massive difference. I mean, if you can imagine the difference that there would have been if we had had a Labour government now in terms of the handling of the COVID-19 crisis overall, I think, judging by what we've seen over the past few weeks, things would have been vastly different. And before the COVID-19 crisis came, things would have been different. And I suppose that's why the Labour leaked report was so painful, because, it's just this figure that keeps coming up, 2,500 votes, just 2,500 votes off winning a general election. And it was funny, even after we lost that election, because things were about really uncertain with whether or not Theresa May would be able to form a government with the DUP. I can tell you that even after that, there was still some uncertainty. So you could see from some of the government departments that we had to interact with that civil servants were being nice to us because they weren't sure who was going to be their boss in the next week's time. And just to think that we could have had all of that if people didn't put their factionalism above the importance of having a Labour government, it's completely appalling. I mean, there've always been factions, and that those are not, something that we've not seen before. People have their own groups, they have their own ideas. But why on earth would you join a party if you were to sabotage its main chance at leading the country? I just couldn't understand that. And then on top of that, we had the issues with, very real racism and bullying and horrible remarks about a number of Black MPs, Diane Abbott, Jim Butler, Clive Lewis, all of those things going on. Now, we all know what's been the situation over the past few years, particularly with the rise in social media and how people are allowed to bully people online. And we all know that Diane is somebody who has endured this the most. So to see people from within our own party piling in on that and disclosing her location to journalists was absolutely disgraceful, something that we wouldn't expect from members of the party, but also actually staff of the party. Now, I understand the process in which, as a former trade union official for Labour Party staff, I know that there may be some issues with naming individuals in the leaked report. That was definitely a problem. But and where those issues have to be addressed, they do have to be addressed. But I don't understand why they seem to be addressed above and beyond what was actually appeared in the report. Some of the things that we saw were outrageous, and if we are really to take the party forward, those things have to be dealt with. Most of all, there needs to be equality in how we apply our disciplinary process. Now, I remember during what we now call the Great Purge, an intern that actually used to work in office who was suspended from the party for simply saying that the Labour Party's immigration mug was terrible and, we could do better, like the Greens' immigration mug. For that reason, she was suspended from the party. But we now see that there is a situation where people have in writing made these horrible marks and done these terrible things, even misused funds, and no one has been suspended yet. I don't see how that situation is fair, and I don't see how that fosters confidence in the party. So I understand why some people are very upset and that they say that they want to leave, but I would say that's absolutely not the case. Just as this meeting was called Don't Leave, Organise, we absolutely have to do it. You know, Matt touched on it earlier. No one in the leadership contest, including the winner, could depart from the policies that were put forward. Now, you saw it in the way that they portrayed themselves in all of their hustings. Nobody majorly departed from the policies that were put forward. And that doesn't mean that there aren't necessarily going to be changes, but even more so, that means people know where the party is at. They know where we've taken things. They know what the members want. You know, the surge in membership which came after Jeremy was the leader. So they know exactly where it is that we are in terms of policies, and it is our job now to maintain it. It's really important that we unite and, you know, and have some self-reflection. It was also touched on before. We find it very difficult sometimes in the left to come to an agreement, and we can see this with what's happened with the NEC. That all has to change. We're going to find it so difficult to find ourselves in certain positions of influence if we continue to fight amongst ourselves. There is so much more that we agree on than we disagree on. And if we just hold fast to these policies that we've put forward, these views, these socialist views that we've been able to achieve within the party, I think we really do have a chance of making sure they stay what is the policy of the Labour Party. Now, I'm somebody who personally doesn't believe in centrism. I don't think centrism wins elections. I think centrism wins mistrust. You've got to be firm in what you believe. And you know what, sometimes if people don't agree with you, they don't agree with you, but at least they know that you're not the type of person that's just very, very wishy-washy on what they say. Over the years, politicians have built up so much distrust amongst the public just by changing their views because of shifting power bases, and that's not right. And we need to show them what it is to hold fast. We need to support Black self-organisation within the party, and it's really, really important, not just to the party overall, but to the left. For a number of years, I think we haven't addressed our issues with Black self-organisation within the left, and actually, you know, addressing issues of racism within the left. We need to be very, very clear and careful as to how we treat our BAME communities when they do attempt to get involved. It's very, very important that we have a diverse makeup in the Labour Party. Far too often we've got situations where Black people will sign up to be a member of the Labour Party but may not necessarily come to meetings. And it's true, the fact is that the Black vote in this country could turn any election if you could encourage people to vote, and that's not going to happen if we don't address those issues as well ourselves. I think it's very, very important that we are having this inquiry into the report, but I think it needs to be clear, very, very clear, what it is that we hope to achieve, and the focus needs to be on changing the culture in the party. And our focus as a left needs to be maintaining the policies that we have worked for years and years for to get to the forefront. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Belle. There's a lot of anger there, rightly so, and a lot of us, most of us, all of people feel the same. So thank you for putting that into such articulate words. That was really uplifting and spoke for me, certainly, as a BAME woman. So our next speaker is often introduced with the words, "Our next speaker needs no introduction," but I'm going to break with convention. She's been the Member of Parliament for Hackney North and Stoke Newington since 1987. She's held various positions in successive shadow cabinets. She was the country's first Black female MP and is the longest serving Black MP in the House of Commons. We all know this, but I really wanted to say this out loud. She was born in Paddington, and it just so happens so was I. She's an inspiration to millions, especially women of colour in the world of politics like myself. She's one of the bravest and most courageous women in public life, in my opinion, and it is an absolute pleasure to welcome Diane Abbott. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Love you, Diane. We love you.
Hear me?
We love you.
Thank you. But you can hear me. Great. There's a quote by Nye Bevan that comes to mind. He said that the right wing of the Labour Party would rather see it fall into perpetual decline than abide by its democratic decisions. And that's been the point about the Jeremy Corbyn era. Jeremy won not one, but 2 leadership elections. And the right wing of the party, with their allies in the media and the NGO world, they simply couldn't tolerate it. And the 2019 result and this awful Labour leaks document shows that they really would rather see the Labour Party lose a general election than see it under genuine left leadership. And as somebody that was in Jeremy's shadow cabinet from 2015 onwards, you cannot overstate the bitterness and anger of the right wing of the party and their allies in the bureaucracy. But even I was taken aback by how bitter and angry they were shown to be in the Labour League report.
People were very often saying that's what I can
And
understand.
there's always been factions in the party. I've never known a time when there weren't factions. But this was a faction, as I say, that would rather see the Tories win. And that's completely unacceptable. And one of the things that I'd like to see as a result of the inquiry into the report is if it is that people, people paid by the party, paid with members' money, have broken the rules or broken their duty of care, then there needs to be some kind of disciplinary process. You know, if the roles were reversed and these were left-wingers doing equivalent things, they would be at the party so quick their feet wouldn't touch the ground. And yet some of the people named in that report are still walking around party HQ. So I think it's only if action is taken on some of these people, well, I think we can begin to win back the trust and confidence of some members. But of course, we can't leave. I haven't left. 32 years of experiencing institutional racism in the party, and I haven't gone anywhere because I know what I'm in the party for. I know what I'm in here to fight for. We need to have effective action about what's been revealed in that report. We need to change the culture of the party. We need to continue to build a party and continue to build its diversity. And we'll do that by being seen out campaigning about the things that diverse communities and young people care about. And the COVID-19 calamity reveals everything that we need to be campaigning on. It's not just investment in the NHS, so that's very important, but it's also the structural inequalities, racial and otherwise, that COVID-19 is revealing. So it was a report, it wasn't completely shocking, but it was very upsetting. I want to see action, but I believe there's so much to do in the party, rebuilding it and moving forward. And I would say, here to stay, here to fight. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak.
Diane, thank you so much. And as well as everything that Diane has said and that she has experienced, just a little reminder that Diane's speech on civil liberties, so very relevant right now, in the debate on the Counter-Terrorism Bill 2008, won the Spectator magazine's Parliamentary Speech of the Year award and further recognition at the 2008 Human Rights Awards. So thank you, Diane. All of these things come together to be so relevant right now. So fabulous. Our speakers have raised so many things, and I'm sure there are lots of questions. So we have two people who are what we call spotting for us. So if you could raise your hands electronically, there's Naomi Wimborne-Idrisi and Bonnie Craven. If they miss you, please put something in the chat to make sure that you are not overlooked. So I'm asking them to feed questions through in threes. And when people are called, could they make themselves known so that we can unmute you and speak in the order that we call you? And because it's such a huge meeting, we've got over 550 people. I'm going to allow 2 minutes for contributions and questions. If your question is to a particular panelist, please let us know and they'll answer directly without needing me to intervene. So, Naomi, have we got our first 3 questions? I do know that Joe Bird is on the call. Joe, would you like to ask a question? I know you had something to raise.
Thanks very much, excellent speakers, and thank you very much to Don't Leave Organise for organising this event. It's really crucial that we sustain ourselves through these struggles that we're actively engaged in. I was a candidate in the NEC election. I came forth, and I also, as part of that campaign, spoke with thousands of members across the country of all different kinds, and it really struck me that Black and Asian and minority ethnic members were struggling almost more than anybody else just to stay in the party. The racism that they were dealing with, the difference between how their complaints were dealt with and how the complaints were dealt with, huge. And that's become very clear in the report. Also, I think the Labour Party owes huge apologies to all kinds of people, but particularly people whose complaints were deprioritised when complaints about anti-Semitism was over-prioritised. There's also people in the report named, people that we know who died within days of receiving their disciplinary letter from the Labour Party, and they're also an apology, and the Labour Party should make the record straight where they can in those cases. My question is about what can we do as white people? Like, I'm a white Jewish person. How can I support Black self-organisation within our movement?
Thank you, Joe. Is there a particular panelist you'd like to answer you?
It'd be great to hear from Diane or Belle.
Okay. Diane and Belle. Diane, would you like to come in on that?
Well, how to be a good ally for Black self-organisation. I mean, first of all, at a local level, it's important to try and support Black people who do want to be active. As I think Belle indicated, a lot of Black people, you know, vote Labour. Without the Black vote, we couldn't hold a lot of inner city seats. And some come to meetings, but they feel put off because it feels cliquey and they don't feel as if they're welcome. So I think it's important to welcome people as individuals. I think it's important that people don't feel excluded. And I think it's important to recognise that almost every policy issue that we talk about as Labour Party members, be it education or be it employment, has a dimension in relation to Black and Asian minority ethnic people. And we shouldn't be talking about policy or thinking about policy in our diverse inner city areas without touching on those issues which concern diverse communities.
Kathy, we've got a couple more names I've put in your private chat.
Okay. Did Belle want to just come in on that one as well? Belle, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry, I don't really think there's much more to add other than you know, speaking to BAME members and asking them what it is that they want to see in the party. I think a lot of time, a lot of assumptions are made about what we want to talk about. But really, Diane's touched on most of it. It's strange to do a question and answer session like this with Diane, because I obviously don't disagree with her. We can be a hive mind at times, except for on raisins. Raisins are an issue.
She doesn't eat raisins, and I do. That's our big source of conflict.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I had heard something about that. So there are lots of people with their hands up. Could we have Alan Gibbons, Jackie Walker, and then I'd like to bring in David Andrew Gannon on a slightly different note about how we can look after, support and give voice to our veterans. So it's Alan, then Jackie, and then David.
Hi, yeah. I just want to talk about unity. I've got one label, and that's socialist, and one organisation, that's Secretary of Liverpool Walton CLP and the Labour Party. I'm involved in Forward Momentum and Don't Leave Organise, because I think if we have another split left going into the next NEC elections, it's almost over for us on the left for a generation. That we were split last time was scandalous. And I think there are indications of positivity. I supported Joe Bird's candidacy. To get 40-odd thousand in that was brilliant. We had enough votes to defeat the right. Lauren came within, 150 votes. And the people are saying we shouldn't try cynicism. I think we have to try. I think there's got to be an optimism and energy, because I think what Matt said is, look at the crisis we're going into. We're talking about possibly a depression deeper than 1929 to 1934. It's going to ask questions of everybody on the left, and we're not getting answers judging by today's PMQs from Kia. To not even mention the panorama thing was awful. And I think we've basically got to toughen up, both intellectually, politically, with political education, support every initiative like Don't Leave Organise, Forward Momentum, and have a real good go at taking our party back.
Thank you. Thanks, Alan. Jackie Walker, did you have a question directed to a particular person, Jackie? Have you got Jackie?
Have you unmuted, Jackie?
I've unmuted now.
Great.
Okay, I've got a kind of comment which may be a question. I think we've got to be very, very careful about saying that this report was accurate. It was not accurate. It was written from a very particular perspective, and the perspective was that anti-Semitism was a significant problem, and that all the people who had been expelled had been properly expelled for having been anti-Semites. Now that is actually dangerous for the left to adopt any suggestion that this was accurate. But on another point, I think what's happening, extraordinary still. I mean, I knew the level of racism, because when I went to my hearing, I had racist graffiti that was included in the evidence against me, and the Labour Party refused to take that out. Now, looking at the report and the people who were handling my disciplinary case, that now makes sense. But, you know, we need to wake up. It's not by coincidence that Black people are not becoming activists. They see what has happened to a number of Black activists. They go to their CLPs when they try and raise issues, they are shut down and shut out. And actually, I want to say something about solidarity, because the one word that nobody said on the panel was about solidarity. And where was the solidarity Where was the solidarity? Because if we're going to move forward, we can only move forward on the basis of solidarity.
Thank you, Jackie. We did say in the introduction, I quoted something from Kevin last night, that we must all stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity in all our struggles, and that cuts across everything as far as I'm concerned. So yes, that's a really important point that we need to repeat very often. So it's David, Andrew Gannon, and then Moshe Makover, and then Diamond Versi. So David, are you there? No, we can come back to David. So Moshe, would you like to speak now?
Yes, I like Jackie was one of the people actually mentioned in this leaked reports, but I'm the one who got away. And I got away thanks to solidarity. The question I have to ask is, don't we need to exercise some self-criticism? And criticism not only of the moral depravity exposed by the report, but also of the questionable attitude of the authors of the report. Because the political, apart from the disclosure of this horrible culture, if you can call it like call it that, of the previous bureaucracy, they actually criticize it substantively for not being diligent enough to implement the questionable definition of anti-Semitism, which it was a gross mistake, wasn't it, to accept. They actually accept that the tsunami of allegations, that the campaign of allegations of anti-Semitism, quote unquote, was bona fides, that it was made in good faith. Wasn't this a mistake to try to appease the alligators? This is my question. I think we should learn the lesson. I think no concession to these allegations and to the alligators.
Thank you very much, Moshe. So is Diamond with us on the call? Diamond Versi, you had your hand up? Have we got Diamond on the call? Okay, Salma Musa, are you there with us, Salma?
Hello.
Hello.
Salma Yaqub.
Oh, hi, Salma Yaqub. I had another Salma.
Oh,
welcome.
hi. Thank you very much. Fantastic meeting so far. I just want to point to the elephant in the room, if I may. A lot of the weaponization that happened with the rights grassroots machinery, where they weaponized racism, I don't think has been addressed sufficiently in the left, and I think that has left to people not experiencing the solidarity that I think, quite frankly, we owe them. And as somebody who's been on the receiving end of right-wing smears, I know what a lonely place it can be. And so the kind of foundation of left-wing movements is solidarity. But I think the right succeeded in demoralizing and dividing us so that people were afraid to extend solidarity even when they knew it was the right thing to do. So I think that really is something that we need to look at ourselves, as much as we know what's been exposed about how the right operates. And linked to this is the role of the EHRC. I noticed that they still haven't looked into Islamophobia in either the Tory party which has been raised by many quarters. They refuse to do it. And I think the Labour Party should be questioning how that institution has been politicised and weaponised. Otherwise, we again are going to be facing another onslaught. It's very predictable. And unless we get our lines kind of strengthened in responding and being proactive on that, and I think this leaked report has actually given us the weapons to do that. I myself was not shocked or surprised, quite frankly, because I've seen firsthand some of this viciousness. And had I spoken about it, I would have come across as deranged. So I'm glad it's kind of been exposed by their own hands, as it were, by their own words. But it's something that must not be brushed under the carpet. We must see disciplinary action. Otherwise, the exodus, because we're seeing the beginning of it. I mean, people like myself, we're excited, but don't leave Organise. That's exactly what we need to do. You know, the right wing who have been part of all of these plots, this is what they want. They want to see the left leave. They couldn't stand the fact that the left, you know, had some say after decades. So the last thing we should be doing is leaving. But as we're staying, we have to be organised. And the NEC slate is a priority, I think. Otherwise, we will be out in the wilderness for the next few decades.
Thank you, Salma. Really powerful points, and lots of people in the chat were agreeing with all of those. So thank you. David is back with us. David.
Can you hear me?
Thank you. 2 minutes, David. Thanks.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Right. Solidarity with Salma and Miss Abbott and Jackie and everybody else. Like, I'm just going to say that, like, I serve with lads from all over the Commonwealth, from Ghana, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Nigeria. You name a Commonwealth country, I served with BAME comrades. And I'm hearing about BAME comrades and that, and BAME veterans being affected by the Windrush and that. And what I was going to say is that our group is intersectional. If we have LGBT members and everything, we're 9% of the population. We have some of the worst mental health. We have some of the worst mental health in the demographic. We have a massive more addiction issues, disproportionately high addiction issues. We're 1 in 10 in the prison population with violent crime. We have more. We're high on homelessness, and we've got the highest suicide of any demographic. Now, we don't have any representation. We are victims of the military-industrial complex, and the Labour Party and comrades, we are not represented. One thing that is discussed is that Tony Blair is still a member of the Labour Party. How can you lie to the Parliamentary Labour Party, the British public, and all our members here and that, and then and cause a war which kills 500,000 people? Yeah, if Jackie Walker speaks out of turn, she gets expelled. I'm trying to work out, what has Chris Williamson done that's worse than what Tony Blair's done? Why is he still a member? Why did we not get rid of him? We had the Chilcot inquiry to do it. I want representation for veterans. I want representation for my comrades. And I want a veteran that every CLP look at these people supporting this pro-war neoliberal thing and telling them, no, we remember, we were there, and it won't happen again. Thank you, comrades.
Fabulous, David. Thank you for reminding us of those comrades that we must stand in solidarity with. And a great follow-up to your speech at conference that I'm sure a lot of us remember. Thank you. Have we got Diamond with us now? Diamond Versey? If not, I'll bring in Mike Cushman. Mike, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Lovely. 2 minutes, okay. Mike, thanks.
Okay, I'm Mike Cushman. I'm an officer of Jewish Voice for Labour and also a proud constituent of the best new MP in the Commons, Bell Ribeiro Adi. I want to talk a bit about the report because my reading of the report, it says many things. It talks about disgraceful behaviour, of course, but the text that runs through it is, this previous crew were corrupt and inefficient witch hunters, and we are going to replace them with efficient by the book witch hunters, and we're still going to throw you out the party. And this is based on two very corrupt constructs. One is there is a thing called left anti-Semitism, which is a way of describing all of those of us who support Palestinian rights as being de facto anti-Semites. And that's been around for some time, and we've been combating that notion over a number of years. But there's a new one in the report, which is denialism. And denialism covers at least three separate concepts. One, there is obviously straight anti-Semitic denialism. People who say that there is no anti-Semitism because it's all made up by the Jews. Now, those people have no part of us, and we've got to deal with them. Secondly, there's a confused denialism. The people who extrapolate from the many examples we see in the report and elsewhere of simply fake or exaggerated claims, and lead from that to say, well, because there are so many exaggerated and fake claims, all claims are fake. And there's a third one, which is a justified skepticism, which is where Jewish Voice for Labour comes from, where I'm sure these comrades here come from, which is saying there is anti-Semitism, but much of what is being described as anti-Semitism is an attack on socialists, an attack on people who support Palestinian rights, and we have a right to be critical, we have a right to be skeptical, and everything we have seen over the past 5 years justifies that skepticism. I was named in the report, and the way they, in the end, dismissed the claims against me, it's actually one of the few jokes in the report. But thank you all for being here, and thank you for our great speakers this evening.
Thanks for those points, Mike, from a very personal perspective. Is Nushi there? Nushi, I think you've got your hand up. I'm afraid your surname isn't in the chat, but are you there to speak?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you very much for organizing this meeting. Hello, everybody. Just wanted to say, anybody actually takes the minutes, first of all?
We're going to save the chat, and we are recording.
Excellent.
Meeting, Nushi.
And the other thing is about anti-Semitism. I think there is not, Labour Party is not, there is no fundamental issue of anti-Semitism in Labour Party. And the main thing is that it actually some sort of right-wing and establishment weapon against the Labour Party, especially under the leadership of Corbyn. And unfortunately, Labour Party couldn't actually strongly attack the media and then right wings against this allegation. For example, Ken Livingstone was actually expelled from the party because of the historical statement, and the other members who were accused unnecessarily about anti-Semitism. I think Labour Party should have some strong attack against media, and then say this is actually some sort of a weapon in the hands of right wings and conservative and establishment to attack the Labour Party, especially under the leadership of Corbyn. And because it's what's very sad, because media was always impressed in bringing some people to attack the Labour Party against anti-Semitism, and then instead of actually bringing some people from Jewish Voice for Labour to the media, they actually brought all right wings and then attack. And unfortunately, Labour Party wasn't on the position that attack the media and then open their hands and then conspiracy behind this allegation of anti-Semitism. And if we want actually to stay in the party and have a solidarity, we should have some sort of strategy against attacking the left group, socialist group who are actually in favor of Palestinian rights and then are against the Israel government and Zionism, to actually support these people and then be strongly attack the media and right wings and then say you are actually you should be shamed to attack our genuine people who are actually defending Palestinian rights, and then also they actually are supported by socialist Jewish people in Israel and also in all over the world, especially in Jewish Voice for Labour. Thank you.
Thank you, Nushi. Thank you very much for those points. I'm going to bring in Pamela Fitzpatrick. Did you have your hand up to come back in with something there? Pamela?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Interesting points. The thing I wanted to stress is that we know that there's racism, we know that there's misogyny, we know that there's ableism, we know that there's age discrimination in the Labour Party. But the reason that we were picked out was not, I believe, for those things. It was because we're on the left, because we're socialists. And honestly, all those things that have been described, I know people, so many different people, the common factor is that they are socialists. And that's why they've been suspended from the party, why they've been ousted, why they've been bullied. And we have to recognise, I know, that there are people who would be not bullied, not ousted from the party, who are BAME, who are women, if they are on the right. And we have to recognise that, because I think otherwise we're in dangerous kind of territory. If you think about the kind of move to get more women MPs, and we had certain types of women MPs elected. We don't have largely socialist MPs, women MPs, or any socialist MPs. So it's really important to think about that. It's class and socialist principles that they have gone after. So I think, going back to the very first question, how do we support our BAME colleagues? It is by making sure that the people in the party at every level, every structure, are socialist and genuinely signed up to the policies of the Labour Party, rather than what we've seen, which has been highlighted in that report. And I have to say, all of these things that we've seen highlighted in the report are not just contained at HQ. They are in many constituency Labour parties. How many people have gone to meetings and have been bullied, have been ousted from Facebook groups because they can't stand what's going on? And the language is tolerated, the language is abusive, and nothing is done about it. So I didn't want that to be lost. Don't want to not recognise that there is racism. There absolutely is. But the core thing that we're being attacked for is being socialist, because I think, as Matt said, this is a very political issue. They were not going to allow a Corbyn government. And just in terms of COVID, my day job, I work in a law centre. I have for many years been a Labour Party member. I've been a trade unionist longer than I've been a Labour Party member, but I've worked in this field of access to justice, of advising people on their rights. And I have for decades just despaired at the Labour Party being a poor imitation of the Tories, with policies around benefits, from cutting benefits to single parents. So when Jeremy Corbyn came along, it was such a relief. I was so genuinely pleased, but it obviously presented such a threat that is why they've come after us. And we have to be prepared for that in the future. So it is, for me, about socialism and ensuring that we protect socialists within the party and we get back to our roots.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much. So we've got a huge amount of hands up. People have been waiting patiently. I'm going to bring in Tina Verkman, Tony Greenstein, and then Luckman Khan, please. Tina, are you there? Have we got Tina?
Oh, yes. Hi.
Hi.
From the Labour Left Alliance and Labour Against the Witch Hunt. And I have to say, we are very concerned about some of the passages in the report, similar to what Jackie's been saying. They quote at length Jenny Formby going after Jackie Walker, Chris Williamson, Mark Wadsworth, Asa Winstanley, Tony Greenstein, etc., etc., etc. None of these people have said or done anything anti-Semitic. And those comrades, in an attempt to appease to the right, I believe, by the Corbyn leadership, have been thrown to the wolves. And they have been smeared, they have been vilified, they have been put through hell. And I think this is a real problem that's not been really discussed in this meeting yet. And I would like to hear the views of the panelists on this. Because there's the fact that the Corbyn leadership has stayed quiet, while hundreds of us have been thrown to the wolves and vilified by the press, etc. And sometimes we now learn they have even colluded in this. And I think that is a tragedy, a real tragedy, and perhaps it is even an unforgivable tragedy. We certainly should not forget what has happened. And I really hope that don't leave Organise brushes this kind of history under the carpet. The key problem is, of course, none of it worked. The right would not shut up. Trying to appease them does not work. They smelled blood and they continued and increased their smears. So I think to answer the question that you ask in your title, what are the lessons from the last 4.5 years? I think the lesson has to be appeasing the right does not work. And if we do not learn this lesson, then we're bound to make the same mistakes over and over again and lose over and over again. So I think we really need to be quite critical, and more critical than I've heard so far, about what our side has done in the name of the left. They have betrayed us. And I think we have to actually be very open and honest about this. It's been the reason why Corbyn has lost. One of the key reasons is appeasing the right and betraying the left. And I think we have to be very
okay. Thank you, Tina. That's 2 minutes, but I think you've been really clear. Did you want anyone in particular to come back to you on that?
Diane.
No, you were muted, Tina. No, you just... I think we'll give the panel a chance to come back towards the end of the Q&A anyway. So we've got Luckman Khan and then Tony Greenstein. Luckman, are you there?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Great. Hi, Luckman. What was your point in 2 minutes, if you can, please?
Thank you. The Labour Party, we need to understand that we think that from the black perspective, there's a lot of racism in there which is not being picked up. We just currently have picked up the NEC election of the BAME member. And it's clear that that person has only won the vote and got to be the BAME NEC member with the trade unions who actually use their block to actually vote that. They should have never used the block vote because their block vote involves in their entire block vote, including their white members. They never went to their black members, union members, to actually give them the vote. So the result is the CLP black members voted, only the CLP black members voted. And the person who won that vote was Jermaine Jackson. The person that finally got into the NEC received 2% less black vote than Jermaine Jackson, but she got the trade union block vote. Now, before the election started, we told Jenny Formby, before the start of the election, that we were not ready for the election. And as a result, the actual union did what we thought they were going to do, which is they didn't know who their black members were, so they used their traditional block vote. And now we actually got a black NEC, we got an NEC member who represents BAME, who were voted in by the white trade union. They will not back off. We've been at them since the results were announced. They will not back off and actually accept the fact that it was Jermaine Jackson who actually won the black vote. Now, I can't understand the level of racism actually coming from all directions from the Labour Party. Why should the trade union actually not accept that they got it wrong? They shouldn't have voted because they couldn't identify their black members. And now they're actually sitting there not taking any notice of our black section, telling them to back off, let the person in who actually won the black vote. I just can't understand how a trade union can actually, all the trade unions can actually ignore the fact that they got it wrong and they will not back off. So to understand racism within the Labour movement, I just cannot do it anymore.
Okay. Luckman, thank you. That's a sort of process point, perhaps something for us to campaign for in the future, but a very, very good point in terms of the BAME vote and representation. I feel exactly the same, in fact. So we have on our list Ali Tregrul. Are you there, Ali?
Sorry, I thought you mentioned I was going to come in next.
Oh, sorry, Tony. Yes, indeed. Yes. Can you keep to 2 minutes because we're running out of time? Thank you.
Certainly try. Look, comrades, we have had a very severe defeat in the general election and what was the overthrow of Corbyn. If we don't analyse where we've gone wrong, we won't go right in the future. There's no doubt that the election of Corbyn was a massive shock to the ruling class and the right and the Labour Party. It happened for very peculiar reasons. And they mounted a counter-offensive. They didn't do it over austerity, which wouldn't have won them too much support, or any other bread and butter issue. They did it over the question of anti-Semitism. We have to be quite clear. The anti-Semitism campaign for the last 4.5 years was not about anti-Semitism. Let me explain quite simply. I have no doubt that in the Labour Party, there are some people who are paedophiles. But does anyone say, seriously, that the Labour Party is overrun by paedophiles or that it's institutionally paedophiliac? Of course not. That happens in society as a whole. The Labour Party is a reflection of that society. Anti-Semitism, of course, will be a few anti-Semites, but the campaign was never about anti-Semitism. And it wasn't about racism, because we had the peculiar fact that the right-wing tabloids, the Express, the Mail, which kicked it off, and all the others, the Sun, etc., were terribly concerned about anti-Semitism at the same time as they were employing people like Katie Hopkins to demonise refugees and asylum seekers. That simply doesn't square up. And it was a complete and abysmal failure to deal with that and to push back on it, which consigned Corbyn to the fate that he undertook. And when I read the report, that is a report in 2 parts. There's a good part which reveals what the right wing were up to, but there's a very appalling part. I was quite shocked to see that Corbyn's office, and Corbyn himself even, was pressing for the expedition of the disciplinary proceedings and the expulsion of myself, of Jackie, of Mark, and Ken Livingstone. That was appalling. It was not only outrageous, it was not only a lack of solidarity, but Corbyn was urging on the process, the very process that was designed to remove him. So whatever he did was to no effect. As Glenn McCluskey put it in the Huff Post, he said, the Board of Deputies won't take yes for an answer. Whatever we do. Sorry?
Thanks, Tony.
Okay, that is the main point. You have to draw conclusions from where you've been.
Sure. Thank you very much, Tony. So someone in the chat has said, it's Carmen. She's had her hand up from the start. Really apologise. It's quite tricky to manage 500 people. But Carmen, I noticed your comment. So would you like to come in now?
Yes, I agree with everything that I have been saying, but I want to move the debate of how are we going to fight back. We know what has happened, and what I have been reading the electoral legislation that cover the UK, and what I can see is that Operation Cupcake, if it really existed, would have breached several articles of that legislation. And if it's proven by the Electoral Commission have the ability to report the matter to the police, for the police to investigate further, and the police can bring criminal charges against those people. So what I would suggest, and I know that Pamela, for example, probably is legally trained, is that as a group, we make a letter with very specific language for all of us to sign it, the more the merrier, and send it to the Electoral Commission asking to investigate if electoral cupcake existed, if the electoral cupcake breach the rules of the Electoral Act, and if so, to bring charges, to consider bringing charges. And that would, I fear that Keir Starmer investigation, independent investigation, is a complete, cover-up. because I don't see any QC of substance wanting to head that investigation. We know what happened with Chakrabarti. It was a very good report, still not implemented. I'm sorry, I don't trust the Labour Party internal, offices, so I want the Electoral Commission to investigate. And if these people diverted funds without the knowledge of the treasurer of the Labour Party, well, they should face criminal charges. The second part that I would also like in terms of organizing, we know that BA is planning to have 12,000 redundancies. We know that the postal workers are facing to have a cut in the postal service on not having Saturdays. Now, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to put pressure on the Labour leadership and they keep to the promise of defending workers rather than cozy up with the Tories? Okay. And what I would suggest is that we have 5 million trade unions to print posters to put in our windows asking for basic universal income. It's something that we can do. It's something simple, but let's start fighting and start of talking over and over again about things that we all know. That's why we are here.
Yes, absolutely, Carmen. Thank you for that. And I'm just going to see if Ekua is here. We'll have a last question and then we'll go back to our speakers. And hopefully, there's been lots in the chat about agreeing with Carmen. What do we actually do now? What is in our hands to achieve?
Echo is here. She's commenting in the chat.
I am here.
Oh, great.
Hey,
hello.
Ekua. Would you like to say something?
I wasn't going to, but I think what I find is the same position and what I've been tackling and dealing with since I joined, which is only 4 years ago, is that unfortunately, comrades, most of you are unable to recognize racism when it slaps you in the face, let alone when it slaps us in the face. And I think that, an example of that is that okay, I'm sure, or I hope that none of us elected Keir as the leader of the Labour Party. However, the reason he was elected is because they won the debate that only with him in power would we be able to rebuild the party, because there's an assumption that this society is racist, and therefore they need to see a white middle-class man at the leadership of a party in order to take it seriously. That attitude is not the one that I believe exists in society, but if we believe it is, and we work out of it, I think it's a particularly middle-class attitude, and I'm sorry, there's a lot of middle-class socialists. I'm one of them, and I tackle it on a daily basis because I think it's important that I do, in the same way I think it's important that you tackle your racism on a daily basis. But the big issue is you don't recognize it. It's all out there. It's what they do, rather than actually what you do. So I've had to sit through meeting after meeting with all sorts of microaggressions and less microaggressions being thrown at me, and my left colleagues unable to really know what's going on, what to do with it, how to back me up, how to support me through it. When it becomes more obvious, there can be a level of understanding, but no real level of how it impacts. So that I think if we're really going to tackle this, the biggest issue is that I've found as well is that people then get very attached to a particular campaign. So yes, the environment is incredibly important, but tackling racism is not an issue. It's not a campaign. It's integral. It's the most important thing that we can do in order to build this party, in order to build the left. And it has to start internally for us to actually start. Black people cannot be the only ones who lead you on this. There's a lot of literature out there. There are lots of ways that you can actually begin to address the way you operate, from a perspective that has been ingrained and you've had raised with you in you. And I'm not doing this from a position of othering you, because I have to do it on a daily basis. I've had to learn to recognize the privilege that comes with being of mixed parentage, or comes with being less melanated, and what happens. I've had to try and balance that with the fact that I also receive racism, on a daily basis, and it's complex. But unless we get to grips with it and we take it personally, and we deal with it personally, we're not going to, I think, be able to build the left, because it's how we come together as a movement, so we feel more empowered to be able to actually address these issues as they come up, because together we will do this. The racism stops us being together, and it's key. And I think if this alliance is going to work, which is what I thought was really important about this debate, was putting it at the forefront, but keeping it at the forefront. Please, can we not just, I think it should be on the agenda of every time we meet, every time we gather hundreds of people, that actually we always keep on the agenda. I'm sure I've run out of time, so I'm going to stop speaking.
The real white people.
Thank you so much.
Racism.
Thank you. Sorry, Tony, we're running out of time, and I want to go back to our speakers. So shall I go back in the order that people spoke? We've nearly run out of time. Maybe I'll do it in reverse order then. So Diane, if you're still with us, would you like to quickly respond and sum up from what you've heard? Is Diane still with us?
No, Cathy, Diane said farewell a while ago.
Oh, I see. So can I take Matt and then Belle and then Pamela? Thank you. Matt. Is Matt with us? Oh, Matt,
You're on mute, Matt.
Muted. You're muted, Matt. Yeah.
Is that it?
There we
okay,
go.
right. Thank you. A few quick points. A lot to sum up, and I don't think we can necessarily sum up such a wide-ranging debate. First of all, on the question of the history of the Labour Party, I want to make a quick point. There's never been a golden age of the Labour Party. Actually, there have been witch hunts throughout the history of the Labour Party against the left. I was expelled myself in, I think, 1990. So there's been many people on the left have been at various times in Labour's history expelled. We just need to accept, because it's a battleground, and the socialists, I think it's questionable to say whether socialists have ever been in a majority in the Labour Party, but that doesn't mean that we don't carry on fighting. I think one of the challenges for us is, how do we break out of the silos that we are in? Because I think one of the great advantages of the idea of Don't Leave, Organise is to try to precisely do that, so that we don't end up with even very good meetings like this of whatever, 400 plus 500 people in a room. The truth is that we need to win thousands of people, and we need to win tens of thousands of people. There are hundreds of thousands of people in the Labour Party, and we have to approach them. That doesn't mean we shy away from some of the difficult debates that people have raised. I think there are, one of my criticisms of the Corbyn project is that there was never a clear strategy laid out as to what was trying to be achieved within the Labour Party. So we end up now, the Socialist Campaign Group of Labour MPs has written a letter, for example, on the document, to which I think the last version they got 20 or 21 MPs to sign. That to me is a disappointment, that actually the socialist left within Parliament is tiny. And actually we should have been using that 5 years to build that and ensure that we had far, far more. And there should have been a clear strategy to do that, an open strategy that we could have engaged in. And frankly, we didn't do that. That's similar to the point I made about some of the other opportunities that were lost. So we have to debate that. We have to review mistakes that were made, including mistakes we all made. But also, I suppose the final point for me is we also need to face outward. There are limits to how far a debate about internal Labour Party matters, and I'm not against having those debates. That's why I'm here. But there are limits to the degree to which you can mobilise large numbers of people on that. There are huge battles out there currently to be fought around the impact of COVID-19, and actually the left needs to be at the forefront of that, cutting across the idea there is some form of national unity that we need to be engaged in. in relation to the current crisis. So we have to review the past, debate the past, debate the mistakes, and address those, and challenge the leadership in relation to any failings to tackle the report and the issues it raises, but actually be external facing and overcome some of the traditional divisions and failings that actually are very clear and evident within the left, within the Labour Party. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Matt. So Belle, could you respond to some of the points that are raised? I know we're running out of time and there was so much to discuss, but perhaps with some concrete points about what the people here, we've had nearly 600 people, we've still got over 400 on the call. What can each of us take away perhaps and actually do in our daily campaigning, even though we're sort of in lockdown?
Well, just the first point, we are...
Belle, we can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me?
That's better, yes. Thanks.
Sorry. I'm having some device issues. On the issue of racism overall, I think somebody touched on it quite well when they said that, you know, we exist in society, and in society racism exists, and in some ways the party has been a reflection of that, but we have to be clear that there is no place for anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or any anti-black racism within our party, and we have to be doing everything we can to root that out. And saying that, that means our procedures should be applied equally across the board, and it means that, you know, where in the report we have seen these instances, they should be dealt with, and that's very, very important. We need to challenge any instance of racism that we see within our party. And on the general point of what we do now as a left, we also have to recognise we are a democratic party. We're a democratic party that has now elected a leader. For many people in the call, it may not be the leader that they voted for, but the best thing we can do is, I would say, not what others did. And what others did was completely undermine the leader that we had, and that's not right. We are a member-led party, and as members, we have every right to organise and ensure that the party reflects the policies that we want to put forward. And as our leader, our leaders should be doing that. And that's what we should be focusing on. That's what we should be organising to do. And I know there are a number of different left groups being set up in response to this, and I think that's important. I support the right of every single group to self-organise on whatever basis they want to. I think that's really, really important. I mean, even if you want to have your own organisation of your family members on the left. But the point is that when it comes down to it, all of these groups have to find a way to come together and to unite around the issues that we agree on. We will not always agree on every single point, but there's some very, very fundamental issues that we do agree on, and we shouldn't let our minor disagreements, even agreements about personalities and groups, you know, deter us from what is our main aim. I don't think that this Tory government is going to last for 4 or 5 years. I am watching what's happening, and I'm not, I actually cannot see how they are going to survive this. So we could find ourselves with another general election sooner than possible. We need to make sure that we're going into that general election, with the policies that us as members want to put forward, and we should use all the mechanisms at our disposal to make sure that that happens. But also make sure when we do it, we go forward as a united party where we may not always agree. We are a broad church, but I believe, looking at what happened in our recent elections, that we have the power to ensure that our policies, those policies we fought for years for, are put to the forefront. So yes, unity amongst those of us that believe in these particular policies.
Fantastic, thank you so much, Belle. Now I've just had a note to say that Ken Loach has been on our call and he would like to speak. I know that's quite unusual to bring someone in at the very end before I go back to Pamela, and I hope, Pamela, you don't mind before you're summing up. Is Ken still on the call? I know Naomi has been in touch with him.
Can you hear me?
Ah, Ken, welcome.
Okay, thanks.
So much. Yes. Can I keep you to two or 3 minutes at the most?
Yes, I'll be very quick.
We can't see your face, Ken. We can't see your face. Can you move your screen?
No, I'm hopeless at organising, at doing this. I'll just be a voice. Is that okay?
That's okay.
All right. I think it's been a great discussion. But I wanted to go back to the leaked report. And I think it's really important that we remember this revealed the rotten heart of the right wing in the party, the abusive language, the disgusting insults, the undermining of everyone's electoral work, you know, all the knocking on the doors. So I think we'd be good to focus on how we expose that. And I think there are key demands that we have to make and really focus our pressure on clarifying these demands. We want immediate suspension of those implicated in the report. We want open disciplinary hearings, no kangaroo court, all the evidence in public, so that party members realise what the right wing of this party does. We want the report to go to the EHRC in full, so that they realise that the people who were delaying these cases were not, their evidence is invalid. And we want to reopen any cases where they've given evidence because their integrity is gone. Further, I think we need to protect the whistleblowers because these people have put are at risk of being victimized themselves. I have to say, I agree with the criticisms made of the leadership in their failure to support those who were victimized. And I absolutely agree with the criticisms of the left. But we cannot now fragment again. That's what the right wing would want, that we fall into our different factions and spend our time attacking each other. We have to come together. That's why I like this network, because no one is saying we're the leaders. So let's come together. Let's present a united front. Let's absolutely articulate these demands and make certain the right wing has to answer them. So immediate suspensions, open disciplinary hearings, reopen the cases that these wretched people have been involved in, and protect the whistleblowers. And my God, we got to make it win.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for coming in, Ken. That was really wonderful. And I've said in the chat that the demands that you've listed and that many people have raised, we're going to collate those from the meeting. We'll capture the chat. That will be my job all day tomorrow to go through that and pick out some points for our next DLO update. So Pamela, are you still with us? Apologies. Would you like to sum up from your point of view the key pieces of the debate and perhaps some concrete things that we can all get our teeth into?
Yeah, absolutely. That was great by Ken Loach, actually, really good summing up. What I was thinking, going back to the report, what the report does so much is to highlight the difference of treatment between left and right members of the party, and in particular in the disciplinary procedures. So like Matt, I'm somebody who was suspended in 2016. I've been the subject of attacks for 4 or 5 years. I've had websites set up attacking me. I've had dossiers compiled about me, all sorts of things. And so have my family. So I do understand the anger, I absolutely do. It's really valid. And, you know, when I go back thinking about my job, I deal with people, helping them access justice all the time. So to see the way that the Labour Party has behaved in many ways just fills me with absolute horror. So we're the Labour Party that introduced the Human Rights Act that has in Article 6 the right to a fair hearing. And really, by anybody's standards, the way that the disciplinary procedures have been dealt with in the past do not meet up to that kind of level in terms of knowing what you're accused, having equality of arms in terms of representation and a whole range of other things. And I understand it can feel like so overwhelming. What can we do as individuals? It's so frustrating. Nobody's listening to us. What can we do? So for me as an individual, I keep fighting all the time. You know, if you think about the low level of MPs that are on the left, think about how few councillors there are that are on the left as a proportion. Think about the structures of the party. We need to get left members at all levels of the Labour Party. So thinking about the report, what I have done personally is I've written an individual letter of complaint, which I've sent in about the leaked report. I've also been involved in setting up a Labour left group in Harrow, which is across 3 constituencies, so that we can organise about local campaigns, but also challenging things that happen. Because if you're on the left, you can feel very isolated, very alone, very bullied. And we are putting together a letter currently that will go to Keir Starmer and to the unions and to Jenny Formby and NEC members. Now, all of this might seem quite trivial. What difference is it going to make? But it does. If you think about organisations like Amnesty International, when they talk about when you write letters, there is power in collective action, and we need to do that, all of us. And, you know, just try to get some changes within the party. Change is not going to happen if we just sit around and, you know, talk about what's happened and how angry we are. We need to be on the NEC. We can't argue about you're not left enough, you're not the right person. We've got to agree on who we're going to support, and then we will get people onto the NEC. We need to back left candidates to be councillors, to be MPs. And if I take just the race issue, you could, in Harrow, say we're going to support BAME candidates against white candidates, let's say. But are you going to support right BAME candidates against left? It's difficult. You know, it's not a simple issue. It's really difficult. But you want to support, you want to challenge racism, you want to challenge ableism and any other type of discrimination. I've also been involved in a group of, we've now got a socialist campaign of Labour councillors. So there's a group there that we're trying to just show that there are left people, you're not alone. We're not going to get it right. There's absolute valid criticism. There are criticisms of Jeremy and John, absolutely, but they are human, they've made mistakes, and I think we all have in many ways. So we've just got to learn from our mistakes. You know, the Don't Mourn, Organise is so relevant now. And particularly, I agree with what Belle has said, because yes, everybody keeps telling me that Boris Johnson, the Tories are so, you know, the polls are so high for them at the moment, but it would be in a crisis. But people are going to realise when they're making a claim for benefit and they say how terrible the system is now, it's always been terrible, it's always been bad, it's always discriminated. You know, if you're somebody who's a person from the EU or somebody who's come from outside the UK who is subject to residence conditions, so you have difficulty accessing benefits. And a lot of these rules were brought in by the Labour Party that distinguish between people to stop them accessing benefits. So let's try to put aside our anger and differences between us as the left and focus on who the real enemy is and come together like this group has done to bring the left together, to focus, to be single-minded, because that's what the right do. They get their candidates in because they focus on getting a single person. We have to do that, or we're going to be in the same situation in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, and every other time. So, and that's also about organising within your trade unions as well, to make sure your trade unions do not have despicable people within them. So that's all I'll say, but it's been great to be part of this. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you for summing up, Pamela. That was really useful. So don't mourn, organise. Don't leave, organise. As John McDonnell said in a recent, I think it was a Novara Media interview, people are feeling angry and leaving because of that. But equally, we can take our anger and use it in the ways that Pamela and Ken and Jackie and Tina and many others tonight have talked about to make our demands heard. So what John McDonnell said was, it's really important to campaign in our workplaces and our communities. We can do that as Labour Party members or not. But when it comes to policy, when it comes to shaping what should be our Labour Party. After all, it's the vehicle for working people and the voice for the many. If we're not in the party, we're looking through the keyhole and shouting through the letterbox. So we do want to organise, but we also want people to stay in the party shoulder to shoulder in all the struggles that we've heard about this evening. So thank you so much, everyone, and for staying a bit longer than we expected. Thank you to all our wonderful speakers. Hopefully you'll join us again because this is obviously a huge topic. And we have kept 400 people through to the bitter end. So thank you so much. This has been really wonderful. We'll capture the chat because there's loads of fabulous ideas in there, and we will share that. And there are details in the chat about how to get in touch with us. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening and hopefully see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.